Okay, so to give you an idea of what to expect during this tasting, I'm going to talk about the history and the culture of the beer styles and the cheese styles. I'm going to talk about correct tasting technique and pouring technique in terms of the beers as well. As we go through, one thing that's nice actually about a recorded tasting as opposed to the live ones that I usually do is you can do it in whichever order you like. You know, you can choose one evening to just pick one beer and one cheese. And save the next one for the next day. You can do them in any order that you like. So actually there's a lot more flexibility and a lot to be said for the recorded experience over the live experience. I will do the taste the cheeses with you in the order that I probably would taste them on a live tasting, but as I say, you can zip back and forward, and that's completely up to you according to whatever you're up to. So what is a beer sommelier? Well, yeah, of course a beer sommelier is someone who knows a lot about beer, a beer expert if you like, but knowledge is not the only thing that's important when you are a beer sommelier. The other thing you've got to be able to do is to be able to get across that knowledge and that information, and most importantly, enthusiasm to help other people make better choices and just enjoy the beer, obviously, and the food as well that goes along with it. Cheese and beer pairings are something that for a lot of people are quite unusual. Obviously, we've all familiar with beer with wine and cheese pairings, but in fact, in a lot of ways, beer is a better pairing and a better partner for a lot of food, and particularly cheese, than wine. With wine, a lot of people make the mistake of choosing red wine with cheese pairings, and aside from a few instances, actually white wine's a lot better. But to my mind, beer is at least as good as white wine, if not better than both. So yeah, hopefully you will agree with that with me today, and you find that out for yourselves. Beer is like cheese. They're both ways of storing in times of plenty. They are both the product of their region, of their area, of terroir, if you like, and you really can taste the history and the local nature of each style of cheese and beer, and hopefully the pairings will help to bring those out as well. Yeah, so I may live in a country famous for its cheese, but actually British cheese and British cheese culture is just as rich and varied as really as any country in the world. It's something that after the two world wars kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. A lot of the cheese making know-how went and died on the battlefields of Europe, and after the Second World War, the focus wasn't on artisanal delicious cheeses. It was on keeping people fed and alive, and so British cheese culture kind of went by the way a little bit. But I'm pleased to say in recent years that's seen a real resurgence, and Neal's Yard Dairies has been at the heart of that. The 6 cheeses that we have today are all from the British Isles, so two are Irish, and the rest are British cheeses. And I'm starting with Applebee's, which is an absolute classic, the Cheshire style. So let's take a look at that. Let's taste our first beer, which is the Lucas. Where a lot of people actually do go wrong when they're tasting the beer is pouring it. Now, the best thing I can say about this is pour vigorously. Pour like you mean it, as I've also heard it said. So what we're going to do here is just pour there, just pop that there. And you can see I poured about 3 fingers for that, and the reason I said pour vigorously is you've got a nice head on the beer, a nice foam. I haven't filled it all the way up to the top. That's left a chamber here for the aroma to develop in the beer. But the first thing we're going to do is just take a look at it. So, a little condensation on there. We can see that this beer is crystal clear, as it should be for the style. It's a Helles style lager, a golden lager. Golden lager, of course, the most popular beer style in the world. About 80% of the beer drunk in the world is a golden lager. Not many as good as this one, several of course. It's a German style, and yeah, it's got a beautiful white foam on it, crystal clear, golden yellow colour. Helles actually means pale, and you can't tell what a beer is by looking at it. You can tell what a beer isn't, style wise certainly, but this, looking like this, the way it presents could be any number of beers, so we need to kind of investigate a little bit further, and that's where our nose starts to come in. So incredibly sophisticated kit on the front of our faces here. developed over thousands of years of human evolution, and the first role of your nose is to prevent you poisoning yourself. So situated just above your mouth there. So yeah, the first thing we can do is just drift that by your nose, and you will start to, even at that kind of range, detect some aromas coming off the beer, and I get a kind of like a doughy, bready aroma. And as you get closer, the way your nose works best is short, sharp sniffs. So just take a little sniff there. If you're tasting, again and again, and you're coming back to it, there's kind of diminishing returns. So I'd say what you can do, and what you'll see people do in beer judging competitions, is you just smell your hand. That kind of resets it. Just smells like you, right? So yeah, if we just pass that by, and yeah. The other thing you can do, and not everybody likes to do this, but it's pretty good, is just pop your hand over the top, and you can agitate the beer a little bit like that, and that will just intensify the aromas coming off it. Yeah, and that's that. It's not an intensely flavoured beer, a Hell style lager, but when you really kind of get into it, there's quite a lot to be picked up in there. As I say, sort of, you can certainly smell the malt. So there's obviously 4 ingredients in beer: water, malt, hops and yeast, and this is a beer certainly where this is a balanced beer where they're working in concert, working together. No one of them is kind of stomping all over the others, and yeah, I mean, that's really the secret as to why these gold lagers are such a popular beer style. They're moreish, they keep you coming back for another sip. So yeah, doughy and bready, and there's also kind of like a sour or green cut grass herbal note in there as well, and that's from the hops, noble hops, European hops, and that's just bread and just freshens that up. And then in the mouth, you take a little sip and you taste that kind of the sweetness of the barley malt, but then it kind of goes away to a bitterness, particularly at the side of the mouth. And as I say, that's the trick that this beer plays on you. It keeps you coming back to more. You're always chasing that sweetness that then goes away to bitterness. And the fact it's not hugely intensely flavoured means that, you can have 3 or 4 pints of it. You get other things that are more strongly flavoured that are instantly kind of delicious, but do you want to have 2, 3, 4, 5 pints of them? Certainly not. But this is a sipping beer you just come back to again and again. It's a thirst quenching beer, and that's part of the reason why it works in this pairing, actually. And it's this malty sweetness actually that is the reason for this pairing, why it works well for me. You've got the cheese has a minerally dry character, and the malt, the sweetness of the malt really works to sweeten that. And an alternative beer style actually would be to go even more malty, I think. Something like a Vienna lager would also work really well, or from the UK, a best bitter I think would be a good pair too. I mentioned this kind of minerality in the cheese, in the Cheshire. I think that's found a partner in the beer. Lager is often kind of, there is this kind of a minerally, almost metally sort of nature, which comes from the yeast in lager, and I think those kind of pick one another up. So in fact, you could say in a way that this pairs on 2 different bases. You've got the sweetness of the malt, and you've also got a minerality as well. So kind of there's 2 flavours in both the cheese and the beer that work together. The sweetness of the malt offsetting the dryness in the cheese, and the minerality as well. And yeah, I think it's a really good pairing, particularly to start out with. The cheese tastes familiar, the beer tastes familiar. So it's a really great place to start, I think, just in terms of discussing and talking about terms in beer and cheese. It's a pairing certainly that it doesn't scare the horses, and it's a great place to start. I hope you enjoyed it too. So our next beer is the Jaipur. This is the flagship beer of Thornbridge. In fact, it's a good time to be drinking it because it's the 15th anniversary of it. 2005 this beer came out, and it's hard to overstate how important this beer was at the time and remains to this day. It's the first West Coast IPA to be brewed in this country. So previous to that, you really were looking at importing from the States. So yeah, when they came out, this knocked people's socks off. It was available, in cask and in keg and in bottle. So yeah, let's pour this. And if you take a look at it, yeah, it's got a lovely white foam, slightly off-white. It's got a rich gold colour and completely crystal clear in there as well. And let's pass it by our noses. And yeah, there's a fruitiness there, but also like a florality as well. Honeysuckle. Yeah, more sort of floral, slightly vegetal on the nose, but really in the mouth is where you know all about this beer and all about this style. And it's just it's super bitter. So really there was nothing like it, as I say, when this beer came out, and it just stopped people in their tracks. It's incredibly structured. There is, you can taste some malt there, but this is really all about the hops. And as I say, super bitter, and it's it's that basis on which this pairing works, of pairing it with the Durst, of course. And if you just taste a little bit of that in your mouth, the creamy, buttery, mouth-filling flavours. So the producer of the Durst is a lady named Jeffa Gill, if I'm saying that right. It's from Cork. And yeah, in 1979, she began making cheese just for her family, using some of the milk from her small herd of dairy cows in uptown townland of Cookmean, near the Durst village in West Cork. And it's kind of about texture as well. It's fairly high carbonation on the Jaipur. Durst has a fruity or perhaps slightly earthy flavour and a rich, lingering aftertaste. There's mild, mellow, grassy flavours, and yeah, perhaps slightly earthy when it's older, and yeah, just a beautiful creamy texture as well. And it's that which this herbal bitterness works against, and just prickles against the creaminess of the cheese as well. So yeah, I think that's I hope it works for you as well. I think that's a great pairing. So our third cheese is the Kirkham's, Lancashire. Just on this is another British territorial cheese. Yeah, it's very pale in colour and obviously crumbly. You can see I wasn't able quite to cut a full slice off there. It's tangy, yeah, crumbly in the mouth. It's actually, and it's dry as well. Perhaps a little lemony. We got the cheese here, and it's a buttery, yogurty, fluffy with like a light texture. Melts in the mouth and tangy. But we've got that dryness, and it's really that dryness that I'm basing the pairing on here. Excuse talking with mouthful, occupational hazard. Yeah, it's that dryness, and it's the fruitiness that the Green Mountain brings to it that really makes this work so well for me, because you're getting everything that you want from the cheese, but that dryness is just quenched like a wave crashing onto parched rocks, if I may. The fruitiness of the beer, the hot character in the beer, lack of bitterness, working with rather than against the dryness of the cheese there. And yeah, the British territorials are really what you call an eating cheese. Now that obviously sounds perhaps like a slightly odd thing to say, all cheeses are there to be eaten, of course, but this is a cheese like the Cheshire, like cheddar, that would have formed, you know, the main part of the meal, particularly, you know, lunchtime of the, you know, the farmhand, the miner, the labourer would have had a lump of cheese like this as the main event in their meal, perhaps with a bit of fruit and, you know, some beer alongside, of course. So yeah, substantial and meant to be eaten in reasonable quantities. It's a filling cheese. It's the main event. Absolutely delicious, and you can, as I say, this is as a British territorial, it's a cheese that, you know, it's an eating cheese, as I say, one that you would, you know, plan to eat quite a fair bit of out and about. And this is just a very easygoing, thirst-quenching, delicious beer as well. So it's a lunchtime pairing, should we say? Picnic pairing. We're going to taste the Colorado Red now. This is a fantastic beer, a real favourite of mine. It's been around for a while, and if you've got one in the box there, you know, be very happy, because from what I understand, this is they're discontinuing brewing this beer. I can't for the life of me understand why. I guess it just, you know, doesn't sell, but it's a brilliant beer. So it's a red IPA, in itself quite an unusual style. Let's pour, and yeah, you can see straight away if you look at that beer in the glass why it might go well with our coulis cheese. But so having a look at it, it's a deep kind of chestnut colour, isn't it? Sort of amber to chestnut. It's got a tan foam on it, and it's clear. If you waft it by your nose, you're getting big malt. It's a combination. You're getting a lot of malt notes on there, but you can also very definitely smell the hops. So this is, it's an American IPA, Colorado, of course. It's the state with the third most breweries per capita in the United States. And yeah, toffee and caramel, but also kind of West Coast IPA nose as well. So you've got some stone fruit and piney resinousness. It's a big old bouquet on there. A lot of sweetness straight away, really quickly bitter as well. So you've got all the malt flavour of butterscotch, honey, but really quite bitter as well. Herbal, and I say like pine coated pine needles. Brilliant balance in the beer, a bittersweet balance. That's absolutely delicious, and enjoy. The producers of coulis, Helen and Dick Willems, moved to Ireland in the 1970s from the Netherlands, and they started making cheese as a hobby, using milk from their own few cows that they had, and locally, and just for their own enjoyment. But the cheese tasted so good that their neighbours started wanting it, and they just grew from there, and eventually it was picked up by Neal's Yard Dairy. Now coulis, very dense in the mouth, complex flavours, and there's a slight salty crunch in it too, just absolutely fantastic. Also, that yeah, we've had some cheeses that are very traditional, as I say, very, ancient. In fact, cheeses, British cheeses, and this is a funny one because it's kind of a mixture of the two because it's actually it's an Irish cheese, the coulis, but it is made by Dutch people, and so it's kind of it's bears similarities with the Dutch Gouda, as you can see, taking a look at it. You can see that aspect of the pairing working really well. The malty, honey, toffee, caramel type notes in the beer, and the malt, and the parallel with the cheese. But what works so well with this is kind of the hops are working twice. So the job that they're doing against the sweet malts and balancing the beer, they also do for the cheese. So the cheese is it's great on its own, but with the two of them, you've got the counterpoint with that bitterness of the hops. And it's just this is a killer combo for me. I hope you're enjoying it too. Okay, our fifth pairing, our fifth beer anyway, is the Florida Vice. So a sour beer. So I'm sure lots of people watching this will have had a sour beer. If you haven't, buckle up. Let's pour it. So yeah, it's an incredible looking beer. Just a gorgeous kind of ruby tequila sunrise, kind of super hazy, opaque, with a fun off-white pinky foam, and just passing that by into the raspberries you get straight away, jumping out a little bit kind of like orange pith. But yeah, the zestiness and the sharpness and of the fruit in there comes straight out. It's like a sherbetiness as well. It's big in the mouth, foams up, fills your mouth. Kind of light to medium body, but the carbonation is high. And yeah, that acidity is there, and you can almost like nibble on the little raspberry pips in it. There aren't any raspberry pips in it, but you know what I mean. It's very fruity. It's not an essence, or it doesn't sort of taste like an approximation of the fruit. It really is fruity. So yeah, style-wise, it's a Berliner Weiss, stronger than most Berliner Weisses. So Berliner Weiss is, as the name suggests, it's a German Berlin wheat beer. It was christened as the champagne of the north by Napoleon's troops as they moved through Berlin, and it's really a summertime beer. Super refreshing, usually at an ABV of around about 2.5–3%. This is obviously north of that, but yeah, these days known as a kettle sour or a quick sour or just a modern sour beer. Just really refreshing as it's supposed to be, and this is just an excellent example of it. And with the pairing with the Baron Bigod, the producers of Baron Bigod, Jonathan and Darcy Crickmore, they've been dairy farmers all their lives at Fen Farm Dairy in Suffolk, and Baron Bigod was in fact the Earl of Norfolk. That's who they named in the 12th century, and that's who they named the cheese after. And it was a cheese that came about really because falling milk prices prompted them to diversify into cheese making, and they saw a gap in the market for a large, proper full-sized brie, and Britain's first unpasteurised brie, the Baron Bigod, was the result. Oily, sort of fatty nature, and they actually ended up purchasing a herd of French cows, the Montbéliarde breed, to provide the rich milk needed to complement the newly acquired cheese making skills. And the first batches just melts in your mouth. Became available only as recently as January 2013, and I can remember there was quite a huge fuss at the time, because that's about how long I've been, I guess straight from around about that date that I started working with this cheese. If you haven't tried a sour beer before, maybe try the cheese first, but where it really works, if you didn't enjoy the sour beer If you had it before the cheese, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it now. Our sixth and final beer. So this is the Market Porter, a classic style, and this is a great example of that style. Just pour it, there we go. Comes up nicely with the foam, and it presents as, it pours as black, presents as black, but actually if you hold it up to the light, you'll see it's actually a really deep, kind of deep red from the malts on there, and the foam is a big, frothy cocoa tan foam. And it's like, it's clear beer, but you can't see through it because it's so dark. But yeah, on the nose you get, I think the first thing you get is the cocoa, kind of cocoa powder, a slight licorice, coffee, and there's a slight kind of acridity burn note in it, which I say is completely fine. That's the style. Yeah, in the mouth, quite light bodied really. And you get, chocolate and some sweetness, but it's balanced. It's balanced with the bitterness there, and that's why, preceding pale ales, this was the British beer style. This is certainly just the London beer style, and it was the style that everybody was drinking. It's hard to overstate the amount of porter that was being drunk in the 17th and 18th centuries, certainly in London and in the area. You can't make pale ales with London water, and really the style hadn't really become developed at that point. And yeah, everybody was drinking porter, and porter is the name of the working man. The people that drank the most of it. And it's just, it's a historical style that I absolutely love. It's a brilliant, sort of autumn winter style as well. And really, this is a pairing that is kind of a Christmas or a winter pairing, certainly. And it's the Stilton. So we take a little bit of that. We all know about Stilton style cheeses, blue cheeses working well with the sweeter wines and red wines and ports and that kind of stuff. So yeah, the background for this is that in 1988, Colston Bassett, one of Britain's finest Stilton makers, finally gave up making unpasteurised Stilton. This was following a food poisoning outbreak at what was wrongly attributed to unpasteurised milk. And most manufacturers of Stilton, most producers stopped making it, and then that was kind of irreversibly locked in the 90s when Stilton was awarded protected designation of origin status. So that's kind of like champagne, i.e. you can only make a particular product in a particular given region in Stilton, and that was awarded to the pasteurised version. So there was just no going back from that point. And in fact, the other manufacturers of Stilton said that if anybody went ahead and made a Stilton and called it Stilton from unpasteurised milk, there would be legal action. And this works really on the same basis. There are other beers, certainly, on this recording, and other beers that will work really well with this cheese. It's so complex. It would work for other reasons as well. But this one is just a very kind of comforting, traditional tasting pairing. Such a creamy cheese that you do want something else in the beer. You want some bitterness, which the porter does provide. I wouldn't, you could pair this with a sweeter stout, a sweeter black beer, and it would still work. But definitely, there's the slight bitterness from the roasted malt that you get in the porter is what prevents this from becoming kind of overly sweet, overly cloying. There's a roasty, toasty kind of nuttiness in the cheese as well that it also kind of gets picked up by the roast malt. Yeah, what a great combo. Okay, yeah, so I think we're nearly there now. I hope that you've liked the the cheeses and the beers that I've chosen, and I hope you've enjoyed the pairings as well. Just about food and beer pairing, it's an art as much as it's a science. We all have our own taste, we have our own preferences, and certainly the pairings that I've suggested here are not the only ones that are available. And by all, please do experiment. There certainly are other ways in which some of the beers that I've paired could be paired differently. So for example, I think the Florida Vice, the sour beer would work excellently with the Stickston that we just had now. The pairing of the Kirkhams and the Applebee's with the Jaipur and the Helles are, they work on a similar basis, slightly different, but I think those two as well would work really, really well as well if you kind of swap those around. So yeah, please do investigate, and if you've got any questions or you'd like to get in contact, I'm pretty easily found on the internet. So yeah, please, I'm always happy to. I've got another product as well if you enjoyed this, which is a virtual tour of the Bermondsey Beer Mile as well, which you can get a recorded one. I also do live tastings as well. So yeah, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed it. All the best. Thanks very much.